You skip the trip. Maybe it was Alaska. Maybe it was a week with the grandkids. Maybe it was a renovation you had been putting off for years. The calculator said the money needed to last 30 years, so you held back. Here is what the calculator did not tell you. Actual spending data on real American retirees shows that spending falls, in real, inflation-adjusted dollars, by as much as 26% between your mid-60s and your mid-80s. Not because of bad decisions, not because of medical bills, because that is what naturally happens as retirement unfolds. The assumption that told you to wait may not match how you will actually live. I help retirees understand the retirement income decisions that standard planning tools leave out. And today, that starts with a number most people never hear, and what it means for how much you are actually allowed to spend right now. In the next 15 minutes, here is what we are covering. First, the real pattern of how retirees spend money across a 30-year retirement. Second, why the standard planning assumption gets this so wrong. Stick around for part 4. The number there is the one that changes the conversation, and I want to make sure you have it before you close this video. There is a retirement researcher named David Blanchett. He did this work while he was at Morningstar, who spent years studying the actual spending patterns of American retirees, not what they planned to spend, not what their advisors assumed, but what they actually spent, year by year, through a real retirement. What he found upended one of the most basic assumptions in retirement planning. Real spending does not stay flat in retirement. It goes down. Significantly. And then, very late in the game, we are talking your late 80s and beyond, it can tick back up because of healthcare costs. That pattern, spending high early, declining through the middle, then nudging back up very late, traces a shape that Blanchett and other researchers call the retirement spending smile. The early retirement years are the go-go years. You're healthy, you have more free time than you have had in decades, and you have deferred gratification through a long career. You travel. You visit family. You spend on experiences you put off. This is genuinely the higher spending phase, and there is nothing wrong with that. Then, somewhere in the mid-70s, natural changes take hold. Travel gets less appealing when getting through airports is an ordeal. Maintaining a big house starts feeling more like a burden than a source of pride. Your social circle narrows, the restaurants you go to less, the vehicles you replace less often, the household goods you buy less of. It accumulates. Spending drifts lower without you deciding to cut back. Blanchett's work, confirmed in the writing of retirement income scholar Wade Pfau, found that real expenditures decline by approximately 1% per year on average as retirees age, 1% in real inflation-adjusted terms after stripping out the effect of rising prices. That steady drift, measured across actual retiree households in the data, is what produces cumulative reductions the research has shown reaching up to 26% between the early and mid-80s. Not every household lands at exactly that number. The pattern varies by income level, health, and household type, but the direction is consistent across the data. Here is the problem. Many basic retirement calculators, the one your advisor may use, the one on your brokerage's website, the free ones you find online, make the same assumption. They assume your spending stays constant in real terms every year from the day you retire to the day you die. A dollar-for-dollar, inflation-adjusted steady amount, year after year, for 30 years. Some tools let you model phased spending if you manually build it in, but most people never do. This assumption is baked into the most famous rule in retirement planning, the 4% rule. Withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year 1, then increase that dollar amount each year with inflation, and historically, you survive a 30-year retirement. The rule was built on real U.S. market history going back to 1926. It is not a bad starting point, but it was designed with that flat spending assumption hardwired in. What happens when you replace the flat spending assumption with the actual spending pattern Blanchett documented? Pfau ran the numbers. With spending that declines by approximately 1% per year in real terms, rather than staying flat for the full 30 years, the safe starting withdrawal rate moves meaningfully higher than the standard 4%. Under historical U.S. market returns, a 30-year retirement horizon, and a diversified portfolio, that is a meaningful jump. On a $1 million portfolio, the difference translates to thousands of dollars more in year one income. On a portfolio of $800,000, we are talking about roughly $5,600 more per year available to spend. In your go-go years, when you can actually use it. I will give you the exact number in Part 4. One important caveat. Before we move to what this means for your plan, pulling more from your portfolio in early retirement can affect two things many retirees already worry about: your Social Security taxation threshold and your Medicare Part B premiums, which can jump based on your income 2 years prior. The right withdrawal rate for you depends on your income sources, your tax situation, and how those benefits interact. Keep that in mind as we go through Part 4. The calculator is not accounting for the fact that the version of you at 78 is very likely spending less than the version at 68. And it may be discouraging you from spending right now by telling you that you need more, that you need to wait, that you cannot afford that trip, when the actual spending data on real retirees says otherwise. Now here is where this changes the number on your actual retirement plan. But first, let me show you the 3 phases that explain why the spending curve looks the way it does. Let me put some structure around this because understanding the 3 phases is what makes this actionable, not just interesting. The first phase is what retirement researchers call the go-go years. Typically, the first 10 to 15 years of retirement. This is when spending tends to be highest. You're active. You can travel without a lot of effort. And critically, this is the phase when spending delivers the highest return on your investment in terms of actual enjoyment and life quality. If there is a bucket list, now is when you work it. If there are grandchildren you want to see grow up in person, the plane tickets you buy at 68 are worth far more to your life than the same dollar spent at 78. This is also the phase most people underestimate because it is the future version of themselves they have the hardest time imagining. When you're 55 and planning, you imagine your 70-year-old self doing roughly what your 55-year-old self does. That is probably not right. The second phase is the slow-go years. The mid to late 70s through the mid-80s for most people. Travel scales back. The home may get downsized. The pace of life slows in ways that feel natural, not punishing. Spending on experiences drops. Spending on services may go up somewhat, a little more help around the house, perhaps. But total expenditure tends to drop anyway. The data on this is consistent. That 1% annual real decline is playing out most visibly here. The third phase is the no-go years, the late 80s and into the 90s. This is where the spending pattern can reverse. And here is the important thing to understand about why. The spending increase in very late retirement is not because retirees suddenly start traveling again or dining out more. It is driven almost entirely by individual healthcare costs. One person at 92 has minimal out-of-pocket health expenses. Another has months in skilled nursing care, consistently above $8,000 a month in many U.S. markets. And Medicare generally does not cover extended custodial care beyond a limited skilled care window after a hospital stay. The spike, when it happens, is different for every household. It is not uniform, and it does not hit everyone. Before we move to Part 4, which has the specific withdrawal rate number I promised you, let me ask you something. Which phase of retirement are you planning for most carefully right now? Drop go-go, slow go, or no-go in the comments. What this means practically is that the no-go years are not an argument to underspend in the go-go years. They are an argument for having a specific plan for late-life healthcare costs, whether that is a long-term care policy, a health savings account with a large reserve, or simply a portion of the portfolio set aside and labeled for that purpose. We will come back to that in Part 5. Here is the number I told you to wait for. When Pfau modeled what happens to the 4% rule if you replace the flat spending assumption with Blanchett's real spending data, the safe starting withdrawal rate moved from 4% to approximately 4.7%, based on historical U.S. market returns, a 30-year horizon, and a diversified portfolio. On a $1 million portfolio, that is the difference between $40,000 and $47,000 in year one. On $800,000, it is roughly $5,600 more per year. In your go-go years, that is the number the standard calculator is not giving you, not because the calculator is broken, because it was built on an assumption about how you will spend, and that assumption does not match what actual retirees do. If you are in your early to mid-60s and in or near retirement, research suggests there is a real possibility you're spending too conservatively, not recklessly, but conservatively in a way that may be costing you years of experiences while you're still healthy enough to have them. The go-go years carry a natural expiration date. The money you do not spend at 68 on a trip you have been putting off, or a renovation that genuinely improves your daily life, or time with the people who matter to you. That money is not going to translate into those experiences at 82. It may not even translate at 75 for many people. The planning profession has spent decades focused on one risk, running out of money in extreme old age. That risk is real, and it deserves serious attention. But there is an opposite risk that gets almost no attention: dying with a large portfolio and a small life, leaving money that could have funded meaningful experiences in your healthiest years sitting unspent, because a calculator built on a flat spending assumption told you that you could not afford it. Rather than locking in a fixed, inflation-adjusted withdrawal for the rest of your life, consider thinking about your retirement spending in phases. Front-load spending on the things that matter into the go-go years, not recklessly. Keep your essential income covered. Keep the late-life healthcare reserve intact, but consciously choose to spend more in the years when spending delivers the most. A retiree with an $800,000 portfolio who steps spending up by $5,600 in year one, moving from a 4% to a 4.7% starting rate, is adding roughly $467 per month. Spread over a family trip, regular dinners, or contributing toward a grandchild savings goal, that is money used when it carries the most weight. Some retirement income researchers also advocate for a guardrail strategy as a framework for this kind of flexible spending. The Guyton-Klinger guardrails approach sets a starting withdrawal rate with defined upper and lower bands. When spending as a percentage of the portfolio crosses the upper band, you cut withdrawals by 10%. When it falls below the lower band, you increase them by 10%. In weaker market years, you skip the inflation raise. Under this approach, some research suggests a starting withdrawal rate closer to 5% or slightly above may hold up over a 30-year retirement. That is not advice for everyone. The right number depends on your Social Security income, any guaranteed income you carry, your portfolio allocation, your tax situation, and how much flexibility you have. but it illustrates that the flat spending assumption is not the only lens, and for a lot of people, it is not the most accurate one. Here is how I think about putting this into practice. 4 steps. Step 1. Separate your spending into 3 buckets. You have essential spending: housing, food, utilities, insurance, the baseline costs of being alive and comfortable. The essential bucket needs income that keeps coming no matter what the stock market does. Social Security, a pension if you have one, any annuity income you choose to carry. When that guaranteed income floor covers your essential costs, the portfolio is not your emergency source. That changes what you can afford to do with it. Step 2. If you have run the numbers, if your essential income is covered, and if your healthcare reserve is funded, the money set aside for the discretionary years is there to be used. Your plan may be able to give you permission to spend more if the numbers support it. The research says you are very likely to spend less of it naturally later. Using more of it now is not a mistake. It is the plan working. Step 3. Build the late life healthcare reserve explicitly. It can be a separate account, a long-term care policy, or a portion of the portfolio set aside for that purpose. The no-go year costs are real, and Medicare generally does not cover extended custodial long-term care. When you know the late life spike has a specific plan behind it, you can spend the rest with more confidence. You stop hedging against every possible outcome by underspending through your entire 60s and 70s. Step 4. Check your calculator's assumptions. If you're using a planning tool that assumes flat, inflation-adjusted spending for the rest of your life, ask yourself whether that matches how you actually expect to live. Most people, when they think honestly about it, know their pace, and their spending will change as they age. If your tool does not let you model a spending decline after 75, you may be working from a number more conservative than your actual life requires. None of this means ignoring longevity risk. People are living longer, and a 30-year retirement is genuinely possible for many Americans who retire in their early 60s. According to Social Security's own actuarial tables, a 65-year-old woman today has a meaningful probability of living into her late 80s. A couple at 65 has a reasonable chance that one of them lives well into their 90s. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to plan intelligently. To make sure the essential floor is covered for life, the healthcare reserve is real, and the spending in the early years is treated as what it actually is. The flat spending assumption tells you to protect every dollar equally across 30 years. The actual research on how retirees spend tells you something different. The dollar you spend at 68 is worth more, not in purchasing power, but in life quality, than the dollar you spend at 78. Adjust the plan to reflect that. Front-load the living. Fund the floor. Reserve for the spike. Do not let a spreadsheet assumptions that does not match reality tell you that your best years are unaffordable. This video is education, not financial advice. Your specific numbers, your health, your guaranteed income, and your actual spending all matter. Walk through this with a fiduciary financial planner and, if you're changing withdrawal amounts, a tax professional who knows how that interacts with your Social Security taxation and Medicare premiums. If this gave you a number worth running in your own plan, share it with someone you know who is working through the same decisions. Drop smile in the comments if you want more videos covering retirement income research that basic planning tools leave out. Hit like if this is useful. It genuinely helps this reach more people your age who need to see it. And subscribe for more plain English retirement planning that starts with what the data actually shows. Retirement is not about protecting a spreadsheet. It is about using the money while the money still means something. See you next time.